The kingdom's main army advanced slowly across the littered battlefield. The crushing attack by the cavalry on 3 sides had given them a decisive victory on the space of a few short minutes. In the second line of the command party, Horace rode beside Sir Rodney. The battlemaster had selected Horace as his shield man, riding on his left side in recognition of his service to the kingdom. It was a rare honor for someone in his first battle, but Sir Rodney thought the boy had more than deserved it. Horace viewed the battlefield with mixed emotions. On the one hand, he was vaguely disappointed that so far he had not been called upon to play a part. On the other hand, he felt a profound sense of relief. The reality of battle was far removed from the glamorous dreams he had entertained as a boy. He had pictured a battle like this as a series of carefully coordinated, almost choreographed actions involving skillful warriors performing brave acts of chivalry. Needless to say, in those dreams, the most prominent and chivalrous warrior on the field had been Horace himself. Instead, he had watched in some horror the stabbing, hacking, shoving brawl of blood and dust and screams that had developed before him. Men and wargals and horses had all died, and their bodies sprawled now in the dust of the plateaus of Uthal, like so many scattered ragdolls. It had been fast and vicious and confused. He glanced now at Sir Rodney. The battlemaster's grim face told him that it was always this way. Horace's throat was dry, and he tried to ease it by swallowing. He felt a sudden stab of doubt. He wondered if he were called upon to fight, whether he would simply freeze in fear. For the first time in his life, it had been driven home to him that people actually died in battles, and this time he could be one of those people. He tried to swallow again. This attempt was no more successful than the last. Morgarth and his remaining soldiers were in a defensive formation at the base of the cliffs. The soft ground held the cavalry back, and there was no option but to take the infantry forward and finish the job in bloody hand-to-hand fighting. Any normal enemy commander would have seen the inevitable result by now and surrendered to spare the lives of his remaining troops. But this was Morgarth, and they knew there would be no negotiating. They steeled themselves for the ugly task ahead of them. It would be a bloody and senseless fight, but there was no alternative. Once and for all, Morgarth's power must be broken. Nevertheless, said Duncan grimly, as his Clarence stopped a bare 100 meters from the Borgles' defensive half-circle, will give him the chance to surrender. He drew breath, about to order his trumpet to sound the signal for a parley, when there was movement at the front rank of the Borgle army. "Sir," said Gillen suddenly, "they have a flag of truce." The kingdom's leader looked in surprise as the white flag was unfurled, carried by a Wargle foot soldier. He stepped forward into the clear ground. From deep within the Wargle ranks came a horn signal, 5 ascending notes, the universal signal that requested a parley. King Duncan made a small gesture of surprise, hesitated, and signaling to his own trumpeter, "I suppose we'd better hear what he has to say," he said. "Give the reply." The trumpeter moistened his lips and blew the acceptance in reply, the same notes in reverse order. "It will be some kind of trick," said Holt grimly. "Morgarth will send a herald to talk while he's making his escape. His voice tailed off as the Wargles' ranks parted once more, and a figure rode forward, immensely tall and thin, clad in black armor and a black helmet. It was unmistakably Morgarth himself. Holt's right hand went instinctively to the quiver slung at his back, and within a second a heavy, armored, piercing arrow was laid on his bowstring. King Duncan saw the movement. "Holt," he said sharply, "I've agreed to a truce. You'll not cause me to break my word, even to Morgarth." The trumpet signal was a bleep a pledge of safety, and Holt reluctantly returned the arrow to his quiver. Duncan made quick eye contact with Baron Arrold, signaling him to keep a close eye on the ranger. Holt shrugged. If he chose to put an arrow into Morgoth's heart, neither Baron Arrold nor anyone else would be quick enough to stop him. Slowly, the vulturative figure on the white horse paced forward, his Wurgle standard bearer before him. A low murmur rose among the kingdom's army as men saw for the first time the man who for the past 15 years had been a constant threat to their lives and well-being. Morgoth stopped a mere 30 meters from their front rank. He could see the royal party where they had moved forward to meet him. His eyes narrowed as he caught sight of the small figure hunched in a grey cloak on a shaggy pony. "Duncan," he called, his thin voice carrying through the sudden silence, "I claim my rights." "You have no rights, Morgoth," the king replied. "You're a rebel and a traitor and a murderer. Surrender now and your men will be spared. That's the only right I will grant you." "I claim the right of trial by single combat," Morgoth shouted back, ignoring the king's words. Then he continued contemptuously, "Or are you too cowardly to accept the challenge? Duncan, will you let more of your men die while you hide behind them, or will you let fate decide the issue here?" For a moment Duncan was caught off guard. Morgoth waited, smiling quietly to himself. He could guess at the thoughts running through the minds of the king and his advisers. He had offered them a course of action that might spare the lives of thousands of their soldiers. Aaron moved his horses alongside the king's and said angrily, "He has no claim to a knight's privileges. He deserves hanging, nothing more." Some of the others muttered agreement. "And yet," said Holt quietly, and they all turned to look at him, "this could solve the problem facing us. The Wargles are mind-bound to Morgoth's will. Now that we can't use cavalry, they'll continue to fight as long as he wills them to, and they'll kill thousands of our men in the process. But if Morgoth were killed in single combat—" Tyler interrupted, finishing the thought. "The Wargles would be without direction. Chances are they would simply stop fighting." Duncan frowned uncertainly. "We don't know that," he began. Sir David of Carraway interrupted. "Surely, sir, it's worth a try. Worth a try. Morgoth has outsmarted himself here, I think. He knows we can't resist the chance to end this on a single combat. He's thrown the dice today and lost, but he obviously plans to challenge you, to kill you as a final act of revenge." "What's your point?" Duncan asked. As Royal Battlemaster, I can respond to any challenge made to you, my lord." There was a brief murmur of this. Morgoth might be a dangerous opponent, but Sir David was the foremost tournament knight of the kingdom. Like his son, he had trained with the fabled swordsmaster McNeil, and his skill in single combat was legendary. He continued eagerly, "Morgoth is using the truce of knighthood to gain a chance to kill you, sir. Obviously, he's overlooked the fact that as king you can be represented by a champion. Give him the right to challenge, and then let me accept." Duncan considered the idea. He looked to his advisers and saw grudging agreement. Abruptly he made up his mind. "All right," he said finally. "I'll accept his right to challenge, but nobody says anything in acceptance. Only me. Is that clear?" His council nodded agreement. Once acceptance was made, it was binding. Duncan stood in his stirrups and called to the ominous black figure. "Morgoth," Duncan called, "although we believe you have forfeited any rights you may have had as a knight, go ahead and make your challenge. As you say, let fate decide this issue." Now Morgoth allowed the smile to creep over his entire face, no longer trying to conceal it from those who witnessed him. He felt a quick surge of triumph in his chest, then a cold wash of hatred swept over him as he looked directly at the small, insignificant-looking figure behind the king. Then, "As it is my right before God," he said carefully, making sure he used the exact ancient words of challenge, and before all here present, I do make so my challenge too, prove my cause right and just too. He couldn't help hesitating and savoring the moment for a second. Holt the ranger. There was a stunned silence. Then as Holt urged Albert forward to respond, Duncan's precautionary cry of "No, stop it!" stopped him. His eyes glittered fiercely. "I'll take my chance, my lord," he said grimly, but Duncan threw out an arm to stop him moving forward. "Holt is not a knight. You cannot challenge him," he called urgently. Morga shrugged. "Actually, Duncan, I can challenge anyone, and anyone can challenge me. As a knight, I don't have to accept any challenge unless it is issued by another knight, but I can choose to do so, and I can choose whom I challenge." "Holt is forbidden to accept," Duncan said angrily. Morga laughed thinly. "Still slinking and hiding, then, Holt?" he sneered. "Like all rangers, did I mention that we have one of your rangers' brats as a prisoner?" He knew the ranger corps was a close-knit group, and he hoped to infuriate Holt with the news that he had captured one of their trainees. "So small we nearly threw him back, but I've decided to keep him for torture instead. That will make one less sneaking, hiding spy in the future." Holt felt the blood draining from his face. There was only one person Morgoth could be talking about. In a fury, he urged Albert forward. "You've got Will?" he asked, his voice quiet but penetrating. Morgoth felt the shock of triumph again, even better than he thought. Obviously, the ranger brat was close to Holt. A sudden feeling of elation filled him. Could he possibly be apprenticed to Holt himself? Suddenly, somehow, he knew this was the truth. "Yes, Will is with us," he replied, "but not for long, of course." Holt felt a red surge of rage and hatred for the vulture-like figure before him. Hands reached out to stop him, but he shoved his horse forward, facing Morgoth. Then Morgoth, "Yes, Holt, I command you to stop," Duncan shouted, drowning him out. But then all eyes were drawn to a sudden movement from the second rank of the army. A mountain figure burst clear, covering the short distance to Morgoth in a heartbeat. The Lord of Rain and Night reached for his sword, then realized the newcomer's own weapon was sheathed. Instead, his right arm drew back, and he hurled his gauntlet into Morgoth's thin face. "Morgoth," he yelled, his young voice cracking, "I challenge you to single combat." Then, wheeling his horse a few paces away, Horace waited for Morgoth's reply. Oh my gosh! Oh my gosh, like I knew it was coming, but still, oh my gosh, that is, oh wow. Okay, well, hopefully we can read the next episode, and we'll read the next chapter. Thank you for listening to me read chapter 33. If you'd like to listen to me chapter 34, then let's get this started. Thank you, bye bye.